Good evening and welcome on the spot. My name is Patrick Amara. Uganda's economic future is pegged on the ability to quickly get out oil of the ground and sell it. It's a time-intensive project that requires huge amounts of financing and investments, both of which the country has placed on the line. Tonight, my guests are, I have Mr. Peter Muliisa, who is the Chief Legal and Corporate Affairs Officer at Uganda National Oil Company Limited. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And
good evening, sir. Viewers.
And we are also joined by Mr. Tony Otoa, Chief Executive, Stanbic Business Incubator Limited. Gentlemen, a warm welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let me begin with you now, because ever since there was the final investments decision, Ugandans were very happy, but more especially you in the oil and gas sector, because that means now the taps are open for finances and you are very sure about the business that you are engaging to and you know where you're headed. Take us through about the final investment decision, when it was made, and what actually is being done. Because I'm asking this, for many years we kept on thinking the oil money is coming out the other year, this year and the other year. But can we now say with certainty that what we're about to hear from you is real, that money will be coming soon?
No,
or money is actually here?
Thank you so much, Patrick. It's true, I can say that in 2025, we should finally be able to start producing crude oil from our fields in Tirenga and Kingfisher. But taking you back to the question, the final investment decision that was made in February of 2022, what final investment decision, or FID as we call it, basically means is that the investors in the sector finally decided, after we had put together all the commercial elements, the legal elements, the negotiations were complete, it went to their boardrooms and it decided that we are now ready to spend the money in Uganda in developing the projects. And when you talk about money in the oil and gas sector, it's really a lot of money. For the two projects that we are dealing with, East African Crude Oil Pipeline as one, and the upstream projects that is Kingfisher and Tirenga. So in essence, for the upstream, we're looking at about $8 billion of investment. For the pipeline, about $4 billion of investment. That is $12 billion in an economy of 44 billion GDP. So that's big investment. And that money from February 1st, 2022, began to be spent in contracts for services and for goods, and we continue to spend it. So in terms of where we are at from then to now, for Kingfisher, we have the rig that the spudding of the rig was, the spudding was done and the function was broadcast and the president was there. So from then we started drilling wells in Kingfisher. As I speak today, we have finalized the 3 wells. And we should be able to continue drilling through this year. And
I just want you to be real, to be descriptive as much as possible, because we're dealing with something most Ugandans, even myself, I don't know, I haven't seen an oil well. When you talk about drilling the well, you actually drill and see the oil and leave it there, or you drill and pump it somewhere and store?
No. So what we are doing right now is we are at the development stage of the oil and gas. We are now drilling wells that will produce the crude oil. But now, each well they drill, they seal, and it's ready for production. But they keep drilling until they have enough wells that will support production. And at that point, which is 2025, as we plan in our schedule, then all these wells will be opened and enabled to produce and connected to the pipeline to transport the crude oil to Tanga for international market consumption. So that's how it works. So we have wells, when we say 3 wells have been drilled, they have been drilled.
And sealed.
Crude oil has been encountered, confirmed to be present, and they are sealed. At the point of production, they will be, for lack of a better word, unsealed and connected to the pipelines that transport this crude oil. So that's how crude oil is produced.
Let me first come back to Mr. Tony Otoa. By the way, Tony Otoa, you and I, we meet.
There's a history,
we meet again. We have a history together, don't we? We are going to talk money here, because he talked about $12 billion in Uganda's economy.
Right.
We have this policy of local content. How much of that money can actually stay in the Ugandan economy? Because there's a possibility that money can hit on the account and go back.
And go back,
How much are we able to retain that money into this economy?
Okay, so Patrick, first of all, I must start by saying, if you were privy to the oil and gas story, say 10 years ago, when we were just exploring, you'll find that so much activity happened, but so much money went out.
Yeah.
And a lot of it went out because there were few Ugandan players who were evidently doing anything in the sector. What happened over time, say from 2006 to 2010, a lot of Uganda started getting to understand this opportunity. So what happened in the exploration phase all the way to the time when we confirmed and then said, let's go now into the FID conversations, Ugandans started preparing themselves. Now, when we talk about how much will be retained, we are very optimistic that at least more than what was retained last time will be retained. The issue of retention, though.
How much was retained last time?
The issue of retention.
Because there could be an improvement of 0 point something percent, and yet.
This is where I'm coming, Patrick, because the issue of retention is what are we providing to create that retention or to make it of value. If you look at the critical jobs that have the biggest budget or budgeted jobs, these are jobs that are very technical, and there are hardly many Ugandan businesses that can do that. Drilling, for instance, it has to be done by a foreign business. And you will find that the Ugandans and our local content or conversations are really around 16 ring-fenced areas, which in my opinion do not really take a good amount of that. So what has to happen? And I am happy that our brothers in UNOC are discovering new wells or are going to be exploring new wells, Kasurubani, and all of these new wells. What that means is that you then have an opportunity for Ugandans to up their game. If you look at Nigeria, 60 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, there were foreign companies that were doing these things. You go to Nigeria today, local businesses are drilling. You don't have to have Total. You don't have to have,
so,
you know,
so in effect, what you're saying that at the phase where they're at now, it is a technical job. Really, there are not many areas where Ugandans can partake and take big money, right?
That is the inconvenient truth.
So is there a way how Ugandans can be prepared to start taking big chunks of money to participate? Because I fear that money can hit on their account, whatever, and then money goes back to Paris, and money goes back to Paris or Portugal.
No, so maybe let me just put some numbers to where we're at today, paint a picture of where we're at today.
Good.
So during the exploration phase that my brother just spoke about, we were only able to retain 28% of the money that was invested. What was invested then was about $3.2 billion. So our target in this phase is 40%. And the law that is the law national content, the upstream law, midstream law, are structured to facilitate and enable attainment of that 40%. So that's why we have priority for Ugandans in particular areas. Some areas actually ring fenced, as is talked about.
But you know, what you're saying, gentlemen, what you're saying is highly technical, very new, and you're ambitious that 40% can be retained?
Yes, absolutely.
And that is based on what?
It's based on a baseline survey that we did that indicated to us what is available in the country. Because you see, the beauty about oil and gas is that oil and gas sector will require all sorts of services and goods that are in the market. Food, logistics, medical services, insurance, all these services. They will need the banks, they will need financing, they will need the labor. So as we stand today, for instance, we've invested about $7.1 billion in the upstream segment of the sector, $1 billion, and about 1.7 has been absorbed byUgandans.
Okay.
So that's a good number to deal with.
All right. And Tony is talking about
final
Uganda.
number, by the way, 20 billion.
Tony, I want to ask this because you can say Ugandans, but I understand a Portuguese or French registered company in Uganda after 2 years, it's Ugandan. So you can say they're Ugandan, but because some Muzungu, with all respect, some Caucasian guy, has also registered a company in Uganda that has been there for 2 years, by law that company is Ugandan. Is that right, Tony?
Yeah, I think that's where we go into the fuzzy nature of our description of what a Ugandan company is. You know, the law is very clear. A Ugandan company is one that is registered, domiciled in Uganda. So I mean, if I am, you know, Smith and I register in Uganda and it's you know, localized here, it's a Ugandan company.
So this could be the $1.7 billion could have gone to this kind of of group. I have no problem with that, but I just wanted to highlight that. That could be a possibility.
There's a context to it.
And some guy is just gathering sand and aggregate rocks and is a smith and the money is going back to the UK.
No, Patrick, not necessarily, because again, if you look at the conditions for a lot of these conversations or how it works is there has to be a percentage of workers who are Ugandan, okay? So the idea of how many people, your manpower, are Ugandan. But also how much, if you look at a local content evaluation, it looks at how many or how much goods and services are going to be procured in country.
Yes.
And by the way, the numbers, it's by numbers in detail, meaning that at least out of that 100%, a certain value of manpower or goods and services are going to be procured, and that money is going to be retained in country. I think for me that's a good conversation. You know, whether it is done to the latter is another conversation, but at least the law is very clear.
So you're going to set your standards, you're going to set your parameters of the services and the goods to be provided, and then some people will be technically knocked out. How do you ensure a Ugandan farm can actually reach the standard that you require to serve you?
So that's a very good question. And what we've done for the last probably 5 years is to, from the government side of things, to train Ugandans to look, because most of the jobs, for instance, in the oil and gas sector are blue collar, not white collar. So we focused on the blue collar skilling. And so government invested a lot of money in skilling people. We have so many welders, so many people trained in
and certified to international
standards. Okay. We have enough manpower now to do welding, to support in HSC. But of course, we also required that for employment purposes, Ugandans are given priority. Now, the next element was to deal with the businesses, private sector. And that's how the incubator comes in. That's how other entities, Private Sector Foundation, UMA come in to work with us to ensure that the private sector is prepared. And as I speak today, Patrick, there are so many Ugandan businesses that have been able to bid and run through the bids properly and meet the standards of oil and gas sector and provide the services.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you one vivid example that you will find amazing. We have entities that are doing waste management that are fully Ugandan. Yeah. We have entities, the rig, the very sophisticated rig in Kingfisher was transported properly without incident by a Ugandan company and delivered to the Graben. So there are many Ugandans that have heeded to our call, gone through the training and have met the standards and are continuing to meet the standards, and many more are coming on board. And that's why we value the partnership with the Stanbic Incubator. In
talking about the incubator, Tony, you know, Ugandans, they have that rare ingenuity, and we sometimes we have the entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
We start so many things, incubate so many things, but also somehow they become wobbly. So have we gone past that? The infant mortality.
There was a recent, not really recent, but there was a study that said or confirmed that Uganda is the most entrepreneurial country in the world. I don't know if it's a confirmation or an allegation. That's a different story. But the truth is, many Ugandans are enterprising. But when you look at the longevity of a typical Ugandan enterprise, it's usually 1 to 2, 3 years. Yeah. I will tell you, if you went to URSB today and looked at the numbers of businesses registered today, and you went back the same time next year, or in 2 years' time, you'll find that you have less than 30% that are still breathing.
They've died in their infancy.
They've died. So what we did at the Stanbic Incubator was to say, how about we deal with this issue, but also go into the particular sector that we believe will have an impact, which is the oil and gas sector. In our first cohort, we took on companies like GCC. We trained them. We took on companies like Inspector Africa. We trained them. City Medicals. We trained them. These are the guys with the biggest contracts today in the oil and gas sector. Are we proud? Yes, we're very proud. But the truth is, a lot of businesses need to be supported to understand the idea of compliance. You see, as Ugandans, we've always had this thing of, you know, business, you know, you ask a guy, how about you make your business compliant? And the guy will simply say, why are you stressing me? Business about the tambula. The business has been moving, so why should we do it differently? What we are simply saying is, if you want to get onto the great money that you're talking about, you have to become compliant. The oil and gas sector it does not compromise when it comes to standards. The standards are standards, you know? And sorry to say, but a lot of the time you'll find that our biggest challenge as Ugandan businesses, and this is a fact, it's the inconvenient truth, is our work ethic. The oil and gas sector doesn't know a Sunday, it doesn't know a public holiday. But our typical thing of Uganda, when it's a public holiday, a weekend, a wedding or a funeral, there's a situation. So I think it goes back to work ethic, but also compliance. Are you compliant to the latter? In the sense that when you are being evaluated for an opportunity and they look at your health and safety, which is very critical, by the way, health and safety, they look at the checklist. You have to have that. Did you know, Patrick, for instance, that you need to have a malaria policy? Because you're always falling sick with malaria, you think it's normal. But it's not normal for everyone. So there are all of these things that you need to come and understand. And that's what at the incubator we do. We get your business from that raggedy situation, profile you.
Take them through the baby steps and teething problems.
And when these guys are making money, we're excited, we're happy.
Okay, yeah. I just want to, because you guys seem to be very passionate about what you're doing, and you're speaking with a lot of hope. But we've been there before, where we're saying, okay, this is time we have reached. Once again, 2025 seems to be the target when you'll start pumping the oil. But really is it?
I can assure you and assure all our viewers and Ugandans that 2025 is the target, and it's achievable.
Is that the political target or the real target?
No, it's a technical target. I'll tell you, Patrick, why it's a technical target. We have 3 rigs that are drilling currently. They've been drilling the Kingfisher from Feb, Ntirenga from July. We have a 4th rig that is being assembled. Now, at this point, it's science, because you know how long it's going to drill 900 feet into the ground, how long it's going to drill 3,000 feet. And we know how many wells we need to start producing. We have, for the pipeline that will transport crude oil, we have finished acquisition of land nearly. We're at 88% in Uganda, 99% in Tanzania, where the pipeline will pass. We have ordered for line pipes. We are constructing the coating plant. The marine terminal is under construction. So we are sure. We know how long it will take to lay the pipes. We know how long it will take to transport the pipes. So 2025 is achievable.
Okay, okay, Tony, perhaps you understand this. I don't know at what the calculations you made, because the oil industry is there's a lot of turbulences. You know, sometimes you find the barrel, sometimes it can go even at as low as $30 a barrel. It can go to $100 a barrel. So I don't know at what level have they calculated that Uganda will not make a loss even if the barrel goes to. What is the lowest a barrel can go for Uganda not to make a loss?
You know, that's a very technical question, and that really goes to, you know, a lot of financial analysts. But the truth is, oil today, in today's world, is still a resource that is needed. So the potential of it going below those levels is probably not possible. It is a much needed resource. And again, we are complaining about fuel going expensively or high in most of our fuel stations.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That is an indication of the need. That is a conversation between supply and demand, meaning the demand is high, the supply is low. So it going down might not really happen very soon. But also you need to understand the geopolitics of oil. You know, when you're looking at how, you know, OPEC is dealing with this situation, the situation in Libya, for instance, as well, that's happening right now. What's happening in Nigeria, for instance. There's no electricity in Nigeria. I don't know if you know that, but over the last few days, that will have an impact. So all of these things are things that I believe, and we have seen for years, having an impact on how much oil you'll see in the market, but also the pricing. But a lot of the time, what we know is that oil will always have demand.
So you always have demand, but when you look at the projections in Western Europe, or the big consumers in China, everybody is trying to move away from fossil fuel. You know, they have declared war on actually fossil fuel. At the time when Uganda is starting to begin to think we are pumping our oil, the world is declaring war. What a timing, Tony.
I think that's a very interesting one, and my brother here actually should even be the one to really speak about it, because he's been at the forefront.
Does that concern you?
No, it does, but we do rely on data and analysis. to make the decisions. So we are concerned. We know what the transition is about, and we have a plan on the transition. But let me just set these facts for you to think. Today, 43% of the primary energy source of the world, in what we call the energy mix of the world, is petroleum. And to replace that 43% with another source is not something you can do in 20 years, and not something you can do in 30, 50 years. It's going to take a while. Now, the debate really of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions should not target oil and gas. The conversation should be, how do you achieve neutrality, carbon neutrality? So if I produce 2 barrels of crude oil, and I know they will generate maybe 40 kilograms of carbon dioxide, how do I offset those 40 kilograms? Because that's a debate. And what we've done in Uganda is we've taken all the measures, including use of solar farms to power our pipeline, use of submersible pumps to ensure that we don't use nodding donkeys in the production.
Wait a minute.
To ensure.
Nodding donkeys, speak English. What is this? I can see somebody is bobbing the head thing.
So apologies. But when you're producing crude oil, I'm sure people have seen certain pumps that are used to get the crude oil out.
Okay, now I can imagine the nodding donkey. Now I can see. Now I can see it.
In Uganda, we are removing the use of those. We are going to use submersible pumps. We are going to use electricity from our grid. We are going to use electricity from solar, just to ensure that our carbon footprint is reduced. And as a result of these interventions, there are many others. We are going to plant trees. We are doing so many things. Our crude oil per barrel will generate about 13.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide. The world average is 33. So those are the interventions you put in place to ensure that, because carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions will continue to be generated. We are human beings. We generate carbon dioxide, but we must be able to offset it. So whereas the efforts will continue towards ensuring that greenhouse gas emissions are managed, we believe that the fossil fuel industry is going to continue supporting the energy mix of the world for the next 50 to 100 years.
Peter, Antonio, gentlemen, hold on to your points because you're going to take a break. When we come back, I want us to look into the issue of the refinery. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Peter Muliisa and Tony Otoa. We're discussing the oil and gas sector. Before we took a break, gentlemen, I wanted us to look into the issue of the refinery. And I think President Yoweri Museveni must be still a frustrated man, because his initial idea was actually not even to export crude oil, but first and foremost, the refinery. That must have been a complicated subject for Ugandan leaders, and even you in the oil sector, because the initial dream has not been realized. And even up to now, I'm about to ask a question. Do we have somebody to build a refinery?
Yes, we have the government of Uganda, and the government of Uganda is committed to having the refinery project executed.
Commitment without money means nothing in this business.
The reality is that money follows good business ideas, and the refinery is a fantastic business idea. The rate of return, as we have evaluated it, is around 20%. So any investor will come. The investment structure is done, because we are now going to start producing oil and gas, so the feedstock is available. And so what we have done is we have done the technical studies. We've done front-end engineering and design, which is complete and approved by the regulator. We have done environmental social impact assessment. We have done logistics studies, commercial studies. So what we are now moving towards is negotiation of agreements that will enable us to enter final investment decision. Now, unfortunately, the investor we had could not move with us to that stage, and we're looking for a public sector-led investing group, so that we move from the stage of now the front-end engineering design and environmental social impact assessment studies that we have finished to get into final investment decision. So all I can say is that the government of Uganda is committed to building a 60,000 barrels per day refinery. That is very important for Uganda, and that is very important as a business venture, as something that will impact our economy. Money is not the biggest issue.
You know why? You know why?
The idea.
You know why I'm still a doubting Thomas on this one? Is because almost 8 years ago, you went ahead identifying somebody to build a refinery. There were bids from 3 different companies, including one from South Korea. You chose a company called Arctic Global, somewhere from Russia, but then it failed flat.
Now, I'm actually glad that failed, because we would have had challenges, because you cannot have a refinery before you have crude oil. So right now, where we are at with crude oil coming out in 2025 is a good place to actually conclude a refinery project. So when we tried to do it in 2014, we were a bit ahead of time.
You're still learning the industry.
No, not learning.
Because how could you have taken that decision when you didn't have the product?
Now, of course, then the first oil target was 2017, then to move it to 2021. So it is not that we were absolutely off. It's just that the timing of events, the players we were dealing with in the industry, in the upstream, then Tallow, Heritage, there was a shift as one was selling, and then Total and Sinopec came in. So there are certain dynamics in the industry that were a factor that happened that delayed first oil.
Tony, I have seen in Uganda, sometimes we engage an international company, we think it's a conglomerate, it's going to do work, miracles and wonders. At the end of the day, maybe a job is given to them, and then you realize they actually have no capacity. They actually don't even know this business. So when it comes to due diligence, right, or even benchmarking that Ugandans love so much, right, we somehow never get it in some cases.
I think with the oil and gas sector, it's a little different. I can mention many new ventures which are not oil and gas related, where we have issues, and you know some of them. I won't mention them here. But I think with the oil and gas sector, one beautiful thing, and you know, you might say this and that about the government, but one beautiful thing is the empowerment and the training of Ugandans to be able to do such things. Like my brother here. You see, Peter here, I don't know if you know, was one of the negotiators and the guys when we were in court in the UK representing our country, where we had, you know, a favorable situation coming out of that case. So we have Ugandans in the oil and gas sector who have been developed in terms of their capacity from 1986, I think. From 1986, the likes of Ernest Rubondo, you know, P.S.
Tony, I've also started quoting 1986.
No.
Okay.
No. What is interesting? No. Well, what's really interesting about this time is that the government deliberately went back to this oil and gas conversation, and it brought it back on the table. Remember, this conversation was also in the Obote government. I think you know
even the colonial government.
In the colonial government. But you know, it comes back again. So you have Ugandans who understand the sector, and that's why there've been a lot of these people going out to actually look at these businesses and do that due diligence. I'm not certain of any venture so far where that has happened, even with the refinery, because the refinery guys are guys who actually are doing it. So they're already doing it. It's not like you're going to speculate and get a guy who's coming out to do it. And from what we have seen, the technical capacity of Ugandans in terms of understanding the sector is going up.
Okay.
And hopefully, by the way, because what you need to know, by the Patrick, what we're dealing with at the moment is just 40% of Uganda's capacity. 40% of Uganda's oil and gas capacity. With the UNOC opportunities in Kasurubani and all these places they're opening up, Ugandans are going to be able to understand it even better and work within it a bit. So I don't want to be very cynical. I think I'm very optimistic about.
So you're making a charm offensive to whoever has the capacity and willing to invest in this sector, to build a refinery. How is the prospect?
No, we're actually getting a lot of interest, largely because, Patrick, as I told you, the business is giving you a 20% rate of return. Many people understand it and they will be able to come. And the crude oil is right here about to be produced. It's available. We've given the refinery a fast call on the crude oil that we produce. So as we sit today, I can't mention names, but we have a lot of interest in entities that want to join us to progress the refinery project. And we can assure Ugandans that the refinery is going to happen. And it's going to provide very significant impact on our GDP and the growth of our economy. And we are focusing on it. So the president of this country is still steering that dream, and we are going to achieve it. You know,
countries that have been producing oil for quite some time have developed economies of scale.
Yes.
I'm wondering whether you are able to build a refinery in Hoima, and at the end of the day, you'll be able to compete with the people who have economies of scale, who have known the game better, so that our oil can be able to, to compete.
No, definitely, yes. So that's why we're able to come up with a rate of return of 20%, because we are looking at our competition, we are looking at the market. Now, an inland refinery that sits next to oil wells has several advantages. One, it's getting the crude oil at a less price than you would sell it on the international market, because we net back it. So it doesn't have to have the cost of transportation to the sea. And so it will be a lot less. And you're sitting next to a market that is literally captive. And you're transporting your crude, literally, for this particular refinery, it will be 1 kilometer pipeline transporting the crude into the refinery. So you have the crude oil there, you have a captive market, and you're buying the crude oil at a net back price. So when we do the numbers, that's how we end up with a rate of return of 20%. Even if you competed it with big refineries in the Middle East or India, it still comes out competitive.
You know, Kenya tried to build a refinery, I'm told, in Mombasa, and ran it for some time and abandoned the whole idea because it was not making sense, economic sense.
Yeah, but if you look
if you heard about that? You know about that?
Yes, I do. If you compare the two projects, you'll quickly spot the differences. And the differences are largely the source of feedstock. The kind of market you're dealing with. And so if you're sourcing feedstock, say from Saudi Arabia, you're refinery at the coast in Kenya, you don't have the same advantage as an inland refinery that is sourcing feedstock just right outside the refinery gate.
And I will also remind him, if you recall, when the Kenyans said, we're going to make sure our oil is transported all the way to the coast, they started using trucks. How long did it last? A very short time, and it died out. But also, their quantities are not as much as we have. And again, the beauty, I think, about the Ugandan refinery is look at its location. You have Rwanda very close by. You have DRC. In fact, DRC from the refinery is less than 15 kilometers. You can look at it. You can actually see
Put a badge on there.
There's so much opportunity. DRC, Tanzania, South Sudan.
This is a 60,000 barrel
per day.
Yeah. In terms of barrels, how much do we consume in Uganda?
No, currently we consume about 35,000 barrels per day. That's Uganda. If you look at Eastern DRC, it's about 8,000. If you look at South Sudan, it's about 12,000 barrels per day. So when you add it all together, and it's growing at about 9% per annum. Okay. When you look at it, by the time we commission the refinery, it won't even be meeting the whole market's demand. So that's why we planned the 60,000 barrel per day, because we looked at the market and looked at the growth patterns. By probably 2034, we'll need to expand it by 30,000 barrels to meet the market demand. So that's why it's a unique refinery that is sitting right in the middle of a market. It has a captive market next to it.
Tony, the other question I have is on the environment, because oil and gas is being exploited in a very ecologically sensitive area. Do you see the people we're dealing with, people handling this sector, to have what it takes to avoid possible environmental damage that could bring serious catastrophe in that area, in the Alberton region?
No, absolutely. I mean, studies have been done. Mediation or remediation situations have also been proposed. But also, if you went, and this I think a very good reason why many Ugandans need to take visits and see what's happening there, you will see that everything is actually away from what you would think would be a damaged situation. Then you have the Ramsar areas, which are not affected at all. Those are actually left as is. So for the years I've been in the oil and gas sector, I can tell you for a fact that it is done in, or it's going to be done, but even if you went there today, it's done in a very clean manner.
You know, everybody wants to do it in a clean manner. And I don't know whether you have, I followed the Macondo oil spill. You've heard about that?
Yes.
In I think in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes.
It was such a huge headache for President Barack Obama when the spill happened. Well, in the highly technologically advanced America. When I think about Uganda, I fear.
I mean,
about the possible spill. They almost lost it.
Yeah. Let's not say highly technological America. It's the oil and gas industry. the player there, BP, British Petroleum, will be same size as Total or as UNOC that is playing here. It's the same technology that you're deploying. Oil and gas is very highly advanced in technology. And when you look at oil spills in the many centuries of oil and gas, they are countable. They are very few. Why? Because standards are high, technology keeps improving. So what we've done in Uganda is we have even better technology than was being used in Macondo, because technology has continued to improve. And what we have done to ensure that we avoid, first of all, areas of sensitivity, we avoid a damaging environment. For each of our projects, we do environmental social impact assessments that look at, first of all, avoiding areas that are sensitive, avoiding going through areas where there are settlements, where people are, and ensuring that the projects as far away, as my brother Tony was saying, as far away from settlement, from people as possible.
You know, in Uganda, there's no area that's not sensitive. We were talking about the Pearl of Africa, the jewel of Africa. So every part you're going to pass through is sensitive, is ecologically sensitive.
It's correct, but of course you rank the level of sensitivity. And what we've done is that those that can be avoided, we avoid. But where we can't avoid, because it must interact with nature. Any project, be it a road project, be it a house construction, will interact with nature. We mitigate the impacts. And we have many mechanisms to mitigate the impacts. I'll tell you, Patrick, if you go to the Graben today, the 4 rigs that we are using are silent rigs. That means they are more costly. But why did we construct silent rigs? It's to mitigate noise pollution, to mitigate pollution. So it's one of the elements of mitigation that is in our environmental social impact assessments. Now, at that point, you have mitigated. Then you construct and you keep improving. So what we've done, for instance, for the pipeline, that is probably the most that has the most risk in having a spill, an oil spill, is we have fiber that is going to go through the pipeline. So we'll be able to monitor every element of the pipeline from 2 control areas, one in Hoima and another one in Tanga. So we'll be able to see the fluids moving, and we have block valves every 100 kilometers. If there is any problem, we'll be able to isolate that particular area, contain it there, and be able to deal with it at that point. Second, we have an oil spill contingency plan as a country. What happens if there is, in that unlikely event, that there is some form of spill? If there is a spill, of course, we close the block valves and we isolate that part and go deal with it, but we have a spill, an oil spill contingency plan that has national obligations, that has sector obligations, that has all the entities, the obligations they will play. So we are ready.
Okay.
Tony, but also just before we do that, as a country, we decided not to flare.
Yes.
You see, flaring, what you normally see in many countries, where you have the burning of the oil, we agreed as a country not to flare. I think that's a very positive.
Because I'm told in some countries it's even causing cancer.
I mean, it's hazardous, but
so, but you've been to the Graben. Have the people working there, have they even brought in the citizens, the local communities? Are they embracing this? I'm saying this because you remember what happened in the Ogoni area in Nigeria? You know, at the local Banyoro, the local Acholi, the local Luru, and the other places you may go, because you're exploring many places. Are they embracing this industry? Absolutely,
absolutely. First of all, you need to commend the companies for their community liaison officers who are always traversing the place. From my early days when I used to work for an oil company, I won't mention the name, it was evident that community engagements were important. But let me just give you the most interesting example. 2 weeks ago, I was down for the graduation of farmers who had been trained by a company called Pure Grow. And you know, Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum has really tried as much to promote that engagement through these companies that are members. And you could tell from the conversations of the locals that they are excited about the training because the food that is being procured is procured from them. They're called PAPs, Project Affected Parcels. Okay? So most of the food, the tomatoes and whatever, are got from them. The security that manages the camps is from the local community. So the engagements in terms of opportunities, the jobs and all of that, you find it trickling down to local. Because
it can come to the fact that at the end of the day, the locals have no the required skill to partake there, and then they look
Patrick,
at it, and then before you know it, you have a conflict.
Yeah, Patrick. The truth is, the locals haven't been to university like many of us, but they can provide food. To provide food, you don't need a degree. Yeah. To provide security, you don't need a degree. To help with cleaning the camp and doing manual labor and all of that stuff, you don't need a degree. Let me tell you something. When you look at the industry baseline survey that we did in about 10 years ago, we found out that 25% of the needed labor is unskilled labor. Yeah. Unskilled. What we normally call juakali, unskilled. 25%. Mm-hmm. By the way, the people like this, Peter here, and all these fancy people, they are less than 1%. They are 14%, you know, the engineers and all these fancy people are like 1%. Those jobs are gone. The biggest jobs are the 60% where you talked about the blue collar, you know, your welders, your plumbers, and your artisans and all of these things. But the 25% are you unskilled. These are people who just need certification in health and safety, can speak English, but even not really speaking English, but can actually understand what they're doing. And those are the local people that is...
So those local people, the project affected person, all of them were they compensated fully? Because I remember there was a company called Strategic Friends International that was supposed to be dealing with the project affected persons for them to be compensated. And there are people who had opted that, well, I don't need the money built for me, a house and whatever. I think there was a village called Nyamaswaga, something like that, where they were supposed to be housed. So I wonder whether those homes were actually delivered to them and people are living there, and whether it's not like a camp.
No, I think Patrick, I need to take you down to the Graben.
Okay, that's a welcome idea.
You see, the PAPs were given options of either you're compensated or you're given accommodation. Yeah. I will tell you, the accommodation that was given to them for those who accepted was really amazing. And by the way, many of them took it. Because, again, compensation, in my place in Lira, we were compensated for a role that was passing through. When you give a local man or a woman who has never held 1 million shillings, 30 million shillings, 100 million shillings, it's craziness. But those people, if you went to, say, Bugungu or any of these places where, you know, resettlement housing has been done, it's quality housing, and you can see a change in their idea of how to, you know, live within their community. It's actually very, very positive. But I must also add, Patrick, a lot of the time, and that's why I encourage a lot of people to go and see what's happening. Yes. I've had the privilege of doing this for over 10 years, and every time I go, you really see a difference in people. But of course, like any development that will come, not everyone will jump onto it.
You know, some people, Peter, were not well prepared about the money he's talking about. Some people got 100 or 50, or even one more almost got $1 billion, depending on the size of the land, especially where you're building an airport, and they want to hear the update about the airport. And there was an amazing story I had. This old woman got about 150 million shillings, and she had never even held maybe 100,000 or even 50. And then she asked, is this money enough to buy me a border? And they told her, you can buy very many. Yeah. So you can imagine, some people were not prepared at all. I hope they did not land into the hands of sharks and then...
No, what we've done now is learning, of course, from experiences from government projects before, is we realized that many times, if you don't prepare the people, they will definitely waste the opportunity. So we contracted a bank to go and do financial literacy, for all the project affected persons. And these classes were done where they are married couples. You would have both spouses in some classes, then you would have classes that are dedicated to the wives, and then we had them open accounts, together joint accounts, and we've continued to monitor after that. So for those who accepted the cash compensations, we took them through that training. We are monitoring how they are using the money to make sure that also that money does not split families and have.
So was it a requirement for a married person to make sure that the spouse is there, both of them are there?
Yes.
So and this is what I saw. And this is what I heard with my own ears at one point. This lady was asked to tell the benefits of the refinery coming, and she said, the benefit of the refinery for me, I'm going to thank the refinery because it has brought my husband back. What had happened is that they had split with the husband for almost 10 years. But because you had a requirement, this guy who was legally married to bring the wife so that she can sign for the money, the man had to go and hunt for where the woman is to bring her so that you give him the 100 million. And after that, and all the woman wanted was to get back her man. Yeah. And she was like, me, I'm okay with the refinery, I have my man back. I hope they are still together.
Unintended consequences, but positive. But Patrick, just to say, there are many more benefits that have come with this. We have had people get really nice houses, those who chose to be resettled in their houses. And those who got cash compensations have been helped. We have testimonies of people who have been helped to use that money to improve their cultivation. There is a testimony of a man I met recently who started on 2 acres of cassava. He's now targeting to do 20 acres of cassava this year. He's supplying Total, he's supplying the camp, the cassava, he's supplying cassava cuttings. He's making significant sums of money. And there are many, many testimonies like that. But they've also, the local content law requires that the local people, the project affected persons, the people who sit in the project area have priority even over nationals. So as we speak today, we have about 13,000 employees that the sector is employing, and 3,900 of those are from the local area where the project is happening. In terms of supply of goods and services, we have received goods and services from local suppliers. This is the small-scale farmers and suppliers and small businesses. I think as of last week, the cumulative figure that was from these suppliers is slightly above $1 million. And this is not little money in that economy. So, but this has been because of very focused intentional actions by the government and by the joint venture partners and oil companies, UNOC, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, concerted effort to ensure that we have an absolute social license to operate.
Tony, very quickly before we take a break.
Just what he hasn't mentioned is our strong partnership with UNOC, where we are working with the farmers as Stanbic Business Incubator, and we are expanding this project, which is quite amazing, because what we've done is to go into all of these major sub-counties where there are all of these amazing farmers, focusing again on women and youth, the underserved, and getting them to be part of this story. So really giving that social license its validity.
Okay, before we take a break, very quickly, Tony, I want to hear your voice on the issue of for us to go the Norwegian way and not the Nigerian way, because this is going to bring us a windfall of money. And I can see the government is just now looking to Hoima. How do you make sure that the other areas, by the way, that have even a bigger capacity to bring money, remember oil is even finite, to bring in money, are not neglected, because there was a possibility that could happen.
Right. Patrick, what you need to appreciate, and today is a very interesting day, because I've really spoken very good about the good things that are happening or have happened by the government. Nigeria has been producing oil for so many years. Do you know when they got their first National Content Act in place? 2010. Uganda, before we even got a drop, or before we even get a drop out, we have all of these policies, laws, acts in place, which stipulate how and what and when. So I think for me, we're doing a good thing. And I'll give you a very simple comparison. Uganda and Ghana discovered their oil or commercial oil quantities around the same time, 2006. Everyone got excited in Ghana, and they went and rushed straight into the production of oil. Where are they now today? They are going back to where we finished putting oils or enacting laws on the environment, on cost sharing, on all of these things. And you know what's so funny nowadays? We are now a benchmark for them in terms of looking at policy. And
even before we produce.
Exactly. So I think for me, setting these, the 2013 Act in place was a great starting point for us as a country. Meaning that if we mess it up, we are the ones to blame. But we have put in place mechanisms to make sure that it goes right.
Gentlemen, hold on to your points because we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want an update on the airport in Hoima. Is it King Kabalega Airport? And also, I will be giving you an opportunity so that you too can have your say. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Peter Muliisa and Tony Otoa. All right, so I'm sure Ugandans and even myself right now, I want to know give us an update on the airport in Hoima.
Ah, great.
The last time I was in that place, I think in Kabale, you are only compensating people to leave.
Yes.
So where do we stand now?
But the airport is now at about 99%
99.
complete. Yes, we should be able to actually launch it before the end of this year. So the runway is done. The cargo section is nearly done, and it's structured to handle at least 4 at the same time, 4 of the biggest cargo planes in the world. So we can bring in all the cargo that can.
So you'll actually be flying your equipment directly from anywhere to Hoima.
Yes. So the intention is to use it largely to bring in refinery equipment. Most of the refinery equipment, but of course it can now bring other equipment even for the upstream sector now, for the pipeline and others. But the great thing about it is that it is also very close to the tourism areas. So, and these are the linkages that we are talking about. So tourists can fly there, do the national park in the north and connect to the national park in the west, and they don't have to come to Kampala anymore. We can also have it as a place, as we intend to use it, because we have the Kabarega Industrial Park. Around the refinery, we're going to create a big industrial park that will have petrochemical production, fertilizer production, that will have an agro-processing zone, cold chain. So what we are seeing is that when you look at where the airport is, you would fly probably 4 to 5 hours to Egypt, 4 to 5 hours to South Africa, 4 to 5 hours to Angola. So it can link to the whole of Africa, and it can take our produce, our goods, our services to these areas, because we are right in the middle of Africa. And that's the plan, to ensure that our agriculture products that have value added to them can reach Angola, can reach Gabon, can reach South Africa, can reach Egypt. And because now we have the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, we would be able to trade in all those areas with the advantages that come with this particular treaty. So it is structured and poised to take advantage of that treaty and to ensure that the produce from Uganda reach these countries. You know,
Tony, sometimes our projects, when you look at the artistic impression of what the project is supposed to look like, and at the end of the day, when you see the finished product, they are way different. I hope they have actually developed that airport to what was envisaged to be, Tony. I'm sure you've been there.
I've been there several times. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I've had the opportunity of actually also driving on the runway. It is beautiful. I think what we have done with that runway, with that airport, is an exceptional job. And again, the guys who did the construction are, very good constructors for the same. What for me I see as the greatest opportunity there, and the conversation that we've always been having with our brothers at UNOC, is agriculture. How can we exploit that airport for agriculture? You have these planes that are bringing in tourists and all this material. Why should they go back alone? And that is why at the Stanbic Business Incubator we decided to go very hard on the issue of agriculture, creating an opportunity for that agribusiness zone or agro zone which is going to be produced to be able to be full and have food going
on. But that will mean that you have really to build the capacity on the agro-processing industry. You know, the other day, South Sudan was actually rejecting our maize. When South Sudan starts rejecting your... Seriously. I mean, they deserve better.
Yeah.
They deserve better. But if we cannot even give them quality,
Yeah, but Patrick,
then how do we even start thinking we are going to...
Patrick, I think, for me, that is a deliberate agenda, or has to be a deliberate agenda of the ministries that are concerned in this area, trade or agriculture. Because you see, a small farmer in my village in Ogur, in Lira, doesn't understand the word aflatoxin. When he sees a new road, he believes the new road is to at least dry his maize quickly and have it packed. And that is what happens in most places. If you drive in most rural towns or you're driving up country, you'll find that most maize or cassava is dried on the road. So they do not understand this thing. So how are we promoting the conversations around aflatoxins? Are we encouraging people to buy tarpaulins away from... You imagine if we were giving tarpaulins for drying all this maize just the way we're giving mosquito nets. That would mean you would have maize that is dried in a better situation. So I think the conversation has to be deliberate from the ministries, you know, that are concerned with this. Because you see, a middleman or your transporter has no idea or his ability to trace where this product has come from is very limited. So that's why you have to go into the conversation of traceability. Who planted this? Where was it planted? How was it planted? What chemicals were used in these things? And that is what we're promoting. Organic farming and really getting the farmers to understand.
You know, it's, as Stanbic Bank, you can get into that. But for you to have really impact, you need to have a government that is also highly interested in the same.
Absolutely.
When you look at the kind of money they're putting to agriculture, you know, 3 or 4% of the total budget, it's laughable. Why? Because they committed themselves to put about 10% of the budget into agriculture, the so-called Maputo Declaration. They never do. You have almost 60% of your population engaged in agriculture. But when you look at what they contribute to the GDP, is low. So it doesn't make sense that the biggest percentage of your people are contributing less to your GDP.
True, true. But I can tell you for a fact, the thing or the opportunity that will alleviate a lot of people in our rural communities is agriculture, but doing it in a more modernized way, mechanizing it and creating an opportunity for people to be able to be more productive. What we are encouraging, let me tell you a very interesting story, especially like in the Hoima situation, is farmers to grow high value commodities.
Yes.
When you plant 10 acres of maize, how much are you going to get out of it? God forbid it rains. I had an experience of my own where I planted 10 acres of maize and I only got 700,000 shillings. I don't want people to be like that. So we're encouraging farmers on a small plot of land, let's say 1/4 acre, high value commodities like lettuce. We have a pastor called Pastor Arthur in Hoima. Pastor Arthur did not understand what farming was in reality. He now does Chinese lettuce. I bet you don't even know Chinese lettuce. When I walked to his farm just to inspect and see how he was doing, I asked him what it was, and he said it's Chinese lettuce. And I asked him, do you eat it? He said, I do not eat it, but I know it brings money. And he has Chinese lettuce in an area of about 1/4 acre, and each lettuce goes for 5,000 to 6,000 shillings. Now, you have about, say, 1,000 of those. Imagine how much money he's making. And by the way, he makes it in a shorter time, which is, say, about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, as compared to maize, which will take 3 to 4 months. So that's what we're trying to get farmers to see and think different, you know. And trust me, when you see the impact on their livelihood,
unfortunately,
you know,
unfortunately, the public sector and the government, which should also be doing this massively, I think it's not that they don't want to do it, but they don't get it.
Is that your assumption?
They do, because you are there trying to show us the numbers, and they think it's very easy.
Yeah.
So it will just be like, you know what, this is the thing to get into.
Yeah.
Because I also don't think they are bad people.
No. And you know, now at the incubator, what we're now trying at the Stanbic Incubator, what we're trying to do now is encouraging things like climate smart agriculture. Climate smart agriculture. A water irrigation system in the village can cost 400,000 shillings. And we've done this at our model farm in Hoima. 400,000 shillings. That money can be made by a farmer in less than 6 months. More and more and more of it.
Okay.
That's the beauty about it.
My contribution, I'm not a specialist in agriculture, but my contribution to this is we have spoken about the standards required in oil and gas. And we painted the picture. We encouraged people to come for training. And oil and gas sector is here, and Ugandans are participating and meeting those standards.
Yeah.
So I think when you have the opportunity, you create the opportunity, you paint the standards, you encourage people, they will eventually work towards that standard. So I'm not really worried about our farmers upping their game to be able to meet international standards. We just have to continue creating the opportunities, and they will be pushed slowly through training, through support to get into that process.
Yep.
I'll give you a few stories, a few numbers. So Gabon, I think, is now in some political issues, but Gabon spends about $1.4 billion on importing food into Gabon. It's 4 hours from Hoima, from that airport. We can get beef, we can get farmers, and we'll eventually meet the standards we should be able to. Because the airport, the Kabarega Industrial Park, is structured to support that whole value chain, through cold chain, through to agro-processing facilities and storage facilities, and planes will be coming, they will be leaving. So what I think we need to focus on and to support and work the government with on is to create these opportunities.
You know, the market in Africa has always been there, but accessing that market has been a problem. And you know, Africa has not been trading with herself. So you can have all this big ambition and big dream, but the truth is we have not been trading with ourselves.
But
ever since the Africa Continental Trade Area was ratified, not many countries have taken advantage of it. I'm told in Kenya, they experimented last November. They wanted to send goods to Ghana by sea. I think they sent it in November and the goods arrived in February.
But you see, Patrick, also what I wanted you to understand, is that even locally in Uganda, we have a huge demand for this food. I will tell you a simple story, and this is a very interesting story when I was still in my oil and gas days at Total. I attended one of those supply development forums where we talked to the public about what's happening in the quarter. It's a requirement, by the way, by law, for the companies to have a supply development forum every quarter. And we went down to this place in Hoima where a very nice guy called Muzamiru came and said, I am sick and tired of you guys coming in and bringing your meat from Kampala. The meat was being got from quality cuts. So we said, okay, that's fine. Do you have enough cows? He said, yes, I have cows, which is true. Do you have an abattoir? I said, I can cut the cow and I bring it to you here. Health and safety wise, that's crazy. So the guy said, okay, but so what Talo did at the time was to build him something like this studio, a very nice tiled abattoir, netted to keep the flies out, running water, and Muzamiru started supplying. In about 6 months, he bought a small truck and was able to supply. After 9 months, or 8 months to 9 months, Muzamiru started disappearing. And the question was why?
He's running out.
And he said, you people eat too much meat.
I don't have...
So, I mean, it's about also supporting the guys to understand that things get wild, but you have to improve on your capacity on a daily. You cannot keep doing things the way you were doing them. So you have to up your game constantly. But also, working in coalition or associations. Our typical Ugandan mentality, which I really do not like, is the working in silos. I have my deal, so I want to eat it alone. You can't, because the sector is very capital intensive, standard intensive, manpower intensive. You have to have a mix. So me working with you, Patrick, and Peter here means I have a great mix of the right people to make this contract not heavy on myself, but achievable. And I think that is the conversation that we need to do. So if you've looked at a lot of the stuff that I write about, I emphasize joint ventures. You know, consortiums. A great way of managing a huge task the best way possible. And I think, in all honesty, that's the way to go.
I mean, it's if you bid as a joint venture, and we've seen companies that have taken bids as joint ventures have ended up with bigger contracts. They've executed them very well and on time. And it's also risk management. Because you do not carry the whole risk alone, but you're able to bid for something bigger than your own capacity. And so we support the issue of joint venture, and we've been preaching joint venture for so many years.
Okay.
And even in this agriculture structure, associations, joint ventures is what will enable our farmers to participate, and it's what we are pushing in the oil and gas sector. It will work the same way in other sectors.
Gentlemen, as we try to conclude this, I want, very briefly, where the pipeline stands right now, from Hoima to Tanga, that journey, how it looks like.
So as I indicated earlier, the pipeline is, of course, it's a linear project, so it's been a big effort in acquiring that land, where it will pass the 30-meter corridor. And in Uganda, we stand at 88% acquisition of land, and all the project-affected persons who accepted to take houses have received their houses, 177 of them.
Even in Uganda?
Houses. This is in Uganda.
Okay.
In Tanzania,
I've seen houses being given out in Tanzania.
Yes, even in Tanzania. So
yes.
Both ends we have built houses and handed them over. Tanzania land acquisition is ahead of Uganda's. We're at 99%. The pipelines, before they are laid, will have to be coated. So we have a coating plant that is under construction in Tanzania that will be ready is going to be ready to receive the pipes and coat them. The line pipes themselves that will go into the ground have been ordered. So we have 2 farms that are producing them now. And so we should have the first batch of pipes by the end of October come into the coating plant. The marine terminal in Tanga is under construction. In Uganda here, you've seen adverts for civil engineering firms to bid for civil works. So we are on course. For the pipeline, we should be able to have it ready by 2025 to transport the crude oil that will be produced at that point. And of course, the general conversation we've had around the pipeline is whether it is getting funding. We've had all these climate activists fighting its funding, but I must speak to Ugandans and say that we have the financing for the pipeline. It's 40% equity. The equity is available. It has been provided, and it is running the project now. The debt component of 60% is oversubscribed by 20%, and we should be able to have the first tranche of debt drawn down either end of this year or early next year. So the pipeline that will transport the crude oil is on course, and it's happening.
Okay, let me tell you the beautiful story on our end about the pipeline. We just concluded a couple of months ago the training of 200 local businesses in the 10 districts that within the pipeline. We did it so well that as Stanbic Business Incubator, that Petroleum Authority and the African Development Bank decided to extend more of that to the end of this year. So we're taking on another chunk of businesses along the pipeline. But the beauty about it is that it's really about creating an opportunity for the local businesses to enjoy these opportunities that he's talking about. Yeah. All of these things he has talked about means there are people who are going to be in that area who need to eat, who need to enjoy it.
You have a pipe that is buried underground going. What business are you talking about?
No, you see the construction. Let me tell you something, Patrick. When you're constructing your house, you have so many workers and masons and all of these. Yes. The lady around should be able to come and provide cooking services. When your house is complete, it's okay. You'll only need the guy to fix a bulb and slash the compound. But the beauty is we need to get our people involved to understand what's going on. You remember the IBS, Industry Baseline Survey? One of the biggest challenges for Ugandan businesses that made them fail to get into the sector was visibility over demand, the failure to know what's going on. Today, that's a different story. Even just this conversation, and that's the beauty about the UCMP 90 days of oil and gas. It's really about saying, how do we get more Ugandans informed about this opportunity? How do we get Ugandans to understand this complex thing? You know, when my brother here talks about donkey, donkeys or whatever, and all of these things are now broken down for a common man to see where he fits in the game and how we can participate.
So, but very briefly, both of you, considering that we have a huge debt as a country, has it not already been mortgaged before it even gets out of the ground, Tony?
I think I'm not very... I will leave my brother Peter to answer that because I'm just a private sector guy.
Yes, I can. Let me speak. Let me address that. So our Public Finance Management Act of 2015 does prohibit any form of lien or encumbrance on our oil which is an asset of the petroleum fund. So whatever debt this country may contract, like any other country, will not in any way be alien or oil will be used as a collateral for that debt. So it's not. But I mean, certain things also need to be put into perspective. When you say 50% of GDP as your debt, is it a great debt? Is it too bad? Some countries have 120%.
Well, there's something to show for
GDP
it. But there's something to show for it.
So where we're at is not really a bad place. And I've been privileged to sit in some cabinet meetings where I see the focus of government in limiting that debt against GDP. And I see all numbers. Does it take us beyond 50? We can't accept that. So there is really great care on the government side to ensure that that debt does not go beyond a certain number, which now is 50%.
Okay.
But depending on our production,
I remember when it was even 30-something.
To pay our taxes, we can even increase it to 60 at some point. It will increase.
Okay. See, that's why I told you he was the best person to answer that question.
Because of the vantage position he has. So, gentlemen, we're coming to the end. Yes. Tony, what's going to be your parting shot?
I think for me, we have a great opportunity as Ugandans, and I think it's a great opportunity. I've been serving at Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum as an advisor for some time now, and I can tell you, we're at a good point for information purposes, but also a sweet spot for Ugandan businesses to get involved in this sector. For Ugandan business that has to get into this oil and gas sector, number one, you have to be compliant. URSB, tax, with your bankers, and finally, which is the last one, NSSF. Yes. Okay, if you have those compliant, you can get onto the National Supply Database, because I can tell you that you cannot provide toilet paper, even toilet paper, if you're not on the NSD. So you need to understand that it's important for your business.
National Supply Database.
Yes, and at the Business Incubator Stanbic, that is what we do. We prepare your business, get it ready, and also support you with getting onto the NSD. And we're proud about it.
Peter, your parting shot.
No, I really want to thank NTV for hosting us, and I want to thank the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum for doing the 90 days of oil and gas, and I hope that many Ugandans will be able to hear these opportunities and take advantage of them. The one call that we continue to make as Uganda National Oil Company and as the sector is on Ugandans who have capacity to work, who have services to provide, goods to provide, to come and understand, come to UNOC, come to Chamber of Mines, come to PAU, go to PAU and learn about the opportunities that are available. Go to home and see what's going on and find a space, some space to participate in. Okay. The money we are talking about is real. It's being spent and people are going to get it. It's best that you do Kulembeka and get some of this money that is being spent in these 4 years.
Peter Muliisa, Chief Legal and Corporate Affairs Officer at Uganda National Oil Company, thank you so much for giving us your time. Tony Otoa, Chief Executive, Stanbic Business Incubator Limited. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having added value to our understanding of the oil and gas sector. And we thank you once more. But you, the viewer, I want to thank you even more for the privilege of your company. Good night and God bless Uganda.